Mom said she's pregnant for the 7th time, but I'm done taking care of her kids. I moved out, but she called the police on me, and this is what occurred. Hey, Reddit. This isn't just about 7 kids, though. We're talking about a full-blown 7 deadly sins home version. Check for greed. Anger. Oh boy. Check again. It's long and a jumble. If I hadn't lived it, I'd say BS too. Here's how it all happened. Al 18 is a man. Start at the beginning. See this. Parents who were virtually kids when they had me. Dad was 20 and Mom was 19. That's some real Einstein-level family planning. We slept at my grandparents' house since teens who work for minimum wage can't afford their own apartment. The time I spent living with my grandparents when I was a kid was the happiest time of my life. My grandpa, who we'll call Gramps, was an old-school mechanic who taught me how to do everything from change oil to rewire outlets. With duct tape and persistence, this guy could mend anything. The man's garage was like a dream come true for me as a kid. Tools that were organized, real workbenches, and projects that made sense. My grandma, Nana, was like Martha Stewart, except she was warm, prepared everything herself, kept the house clean, and never made me feel like a burden. There was always something fantastic going on in the kitchen, and there was always a new batch of cookies cooling on the counter. But this is what actually made those years special. My grandparents made me feel like I was important. Nana would make hot chocolate and really listen to what occurred when I had a difficult day at school. When I was thrilled about anything I learned, Gramps would stop what he was doing and pay attention to me. They came to every school function, recalled what I liked, and made me feel like they were happy to be my grandparents. My folks, on the other hand, acted like the place was a free hotel with room service. They'd show up at 2 a.m. They would go to a party, sleep until noon, and then whine about how worried they were because they had to be an adult. When Gramps was trying to teach my dad how to change a tire or fix a leaky faucet, he would lie on the couch and play video games. My dad would say, "That's what ALA is for," and never look up from his controller. "What do you do if you can't afford ALA?" Gramps would inquire. "I'll sort it out when I get there." My dad did everything that way. You can figure things out later. Let someone else take care of it. Stay away from responsibilities unless you have to. My mom wasn't much better either. She always left me with Nana when her friends wanted to hang out, never asking if it was okay. "Can you keep an eye on him for a few hours? Sarah is going through a tough time and needs to talk to someone. I want to drink and talk behind your back. Therefore here is my child." You don't really think about your parents' flaws when you're 5 years old and eating fresh cookies and learning amazing things from Gramps. I only knew that living with my grandparents was safer and more predictable than chasing my parents around. The move that started my own Vietnam. My parents said they were ready to be on their own when I started 1st grade. They had discovered a rundown rental property across town and were relocating us out. The main reason for this quick growth up. Mom was going to have another baby. I was really looking forward to it. We'd finally have a young brother or sister and a place to live. If I could go back in time and slap some sense into my 6-year-old self, I would. In almost every regard, the house was worse than the last one. I can't go to Gramps' workshop anymore to learn how to use tools. No more cooking by Granny. Whatever frozen junk my parents could microwave. The place was a small 2-bedroom rental with flimsy walls, creaky floors, and a kitchen that was too small for 2 people. My parents acted like they had moved into a mansion. "Look, we have our own place," my mom would say. There were a few areas of dead grass in the yard, but most of it was dirt. And the individuals next door were the kind of people who fought and yelled at each other at 3 a.m. I'm going to name my brother Screamer because he had lungs like a fire truck siren when he was born. My parents began to treat me like I was their personal assistant. The improvement was slow yet steady. It began with small demands. "Hey friend, could you get me a diaper while I finish this show? Tell your brother to be quiet. We want to talk." I was 7 years old. 7. But in their minds, that made me qualified to take care of children. In a few months, these small favors turned into demands. While my parents watched TV, I was supposed to keep Screamer busy, help with feeding time, and change diapers when they weren't doing anything useful. When I complained, their attitude was the worst part. My mom would say, This is what families do. Don't be selfish. If I stated I wanted to play outdoors instead of holding the baby, it was like wanting to be a kid was a bad thing. My dad made this mess even worse. He would come home from his part-time work at a warehouse, fall asleep on the couch, and say he was too tired to deal with baby things. I worked all day. He'd say, I need to relax. And then he'd grab the TV remote while Screamer was having a fit. When they started going out on date nights and leaving me alone with Screamer, I knew I was screwed. Picture 8-year-old me microwaving SpaghettiOs and trying to get a toddler to bed while my parents were out bonding as a couple. They'd leave me with a list of things to do, like I was a babysitter, but I wasn't getting paid and couldn't quit. Bedtime is 8 p.m. There's formula in the fridge. Call only if it's an emergency. Emergency. I was 8. Everything felt like an emergency when you're alone with a screaming baby and no idea what you're doing. If anything went wrong, it was my fault for not being responsible enough. The Screamer wouldn't stop crying. I should have tried harder to calm him down. He spit up on his clean clothes. I should have been more careful when I fed him. The house was a mess when they got back. I should have cleaned up while watching a toddler. It was that bad. But it got worse when they decided to make more minions. Over the next 11 years, my parents decided to fill their own daycare center with kids. 5 more kids joined our family, making things even crazier. Let me introduce you to the people who made my life feel like a survival horror game. Screamer, the first edition, was still true to his name at 10 years old. This kid could probably break noise laws with his decibel levels. He learned that screaming got him attention quickly, so that became his main way of communicating. He didn't want to wear shoes? Scream. Didn't like what was for dinner? Scream. Couldn't find his favorite toy? Nuclear-level screaming. The Destroyer Kid number 3 earned his nickname by breaking everything he touched. The gaming headset I bought him was a work of art. The kid had hands like a demolition crew and the self-control of a toddler on a sugar high. I once saw him break an indestructible toy truck within 5 minutes of opening the package. He was the 4th Spitter Kid. This little princess was like the plant in the game Plants vs. Zombies. She loved to spit on everything. Meals were like Russian roulette. You never knew which plate had been tainted. She would take a bite of her sandwich, spit it back onto the bread, and then offer it to someone else like she was being nice. My parents thought this was just a phase she would grow out of. She never did. Tornado Kid Knocker 5 could turn a clean room into a disaster zone in under 5 minutes. I swear this kid defied the laws of physics with how fast he could create chaos. You could literally watch him enter a room and count down from 10 before everything was destroyed. Velcro Kid number 6, the clingy one who couldn't function unless attached to someone. Guess who that person was most of the time? Spoiler alert, it wasn't our parents. This kid would follow me around the house like a lost puppy, cry if I went to the bathroom alone, and have meltdowns if I tried to go anywhere without him. Hurricane, the baby, was fresh out of the oven and already following in the family tradition of making everyone else's life harder. 6 disasters. Each new addition meant more responsibilities dumped on me. My parents' logic. You're so good with kids. Translation. We're too lazy to parent, so that's your job. Now, here's a perfect example of the dysfunction. Family dinner with frozen pizza because cooking is apparently rocket science. The scene would play out the same way every time. My parents would heat up however many pizzas they thought we needed, put them on plates, and call it dinner. If Spitter didn't like the pepperoni, it went straight on the floor. Not picked off onto her plate, not offered to someone else. On the floor. When I pointed out that this was disgusting and unsanitary, my dad said, "Kids will be kids. At least she's eating the rest." There were no repercussions or lessons to be learned. They just accepted that we were living in a barn and that I was supposed to clean it up. Can you get that pepperoni before someone steps on it? Public outings were my own personal hell. Imagine me chasing Tornado through Target as Screamer had a fit because we wouldn't buy him a toy. Destroyer knocked over a display of soup cans that had been carefully stacked. Spitter was licking the handle of the shopping cart, and Velcro was stuck to my calf, making it hard for me to walk. My parents were standing there like tourists watching street performers, and they kept saying, "Stop that!" without really doing anything to stop anything. People shopping would stare at us like we were in a wildlife documentary. I just wanted to disappear or wear a shirt that said, "Not my kids, not my choice," to avoid the judgmental looks. One lady told my mom to control her kids during a particularly spectacular meltdown in the cereal aisle. My mom said they were just kids. Some people are so judgmental. Lady, your kids just ruined an end cap display and are now using Cheerio boxes as soccer balls. That's not being kids. That's being wild animals that happen to walk on two legs. The car rides to and from these disasters were almost worse than the public scenes. There were 7 people in a minivan that smelled like dead rats and diapers. I was trying to keep them all from killing each other while my parents fought about money, directions, or whose turn it was to deal with the next crisis. Are We There Yet? Became the soundtrack of my teenage years, along with He's Touching Me, I Have to Pee, and the never-ending chorus of baby crying. As I got older, my parents' expectations changed from help out sometimes to you are now our unpaid employee. They always told me I had to babysit every weekend, every school break, and every time I wasn't in class. They never asked. They just said, "We're going to dinner Saturday. You will take care of the youngsters." Made plans with friends. Too bad. School event not important. Normal teenage activities. Selfish waste of time. Friday nights became a particular source of frustration. While other kids my age were hanging out, going to movies, or just being normal teenagers, I was home changing diapers and trying to get 5 kids to bed at reasonable hours. When I was 15, I reached my breaking point. My friend Jake was having a party with just kids from school. They were just hanging out and playing games, which is what I had been looking forward to for weeks because I never got to do normal teenage things. My parents said I could go, which shocked me. For once, they seemed to understand that I needed some kind of social life. I was so excited to finally hang out with people my own age without having to worry about diaper changes or meltdowns. But 2 hours before the party, they dropped the bomb. Plans had changed. We were going to see the late movie instead. The way they said it made my blood boil. It was like my plans were just a little bit of trouble that could be ignored. But you said I could go to Jake's. Plans change. Family comes first. I lost it. I'm 15. Not their dad. My dad's face went dark. We give you food and shelter. The least you can do is help out when we need it. Stop being ungrateful. Unappreciative for wanting one night to be a normal teenager. That's when my cousin Paul came into the picture. Paul was my mom's nephew, about 25, and the complete opposite of our family's dysfunction. He'd been watching this whole situation unfold over the years during family gatherings. And that night, he happened to show up just as my parents were getting ready to leave for their movie. "Where is he going dressed up?" "Hey, Paul," he said, looking at me in my nice clothes. "Oh, he was supposed to go to some party, but we need him here," my mom said, as if canceling my plans was as normal as changing the TV channel. Paul looked between me and the little demons, who were already starting to destroy things. When was the last time this kid got to hang out with friends? He hangs out with his siblings all the time, which isn't the same thing. Paul turned to me and said, "Go to your party. I'll watch them." My mom started to protest, but Paul shut it down with the kind of calm authority I wish I had. He's 15. He should be hanging out with kids his own age, not yours. Boom. The first person in my family to really understand what was going on. My parents tried to argue, but Paul wouldn't budge. "I'm not a teenager. You can guilt trip. Either I watch them or you stay home. Your choice." That night at Jake's party was the first time in years I felt like a normal kid. We played video games, ate pizza that nobody spit on, and I didn't have to worry about anyone's bedtime but my own. From then on, Paul was like the older brother I never had. He would check on me often, take me out of the house when things got too much, and wasn't hesitant to call my parents out on their bad behavior when he saw it happen. "You know this isn't normal, right?" he asked me when we were on a quest to get ice cream. "It's just how our family works," I said, repeating what my parents had taught me. "No, it's how your parents avoid their responsibilities. There's a difference, kid." Having someone finally validate what I'd been feeling for years was like getting permission to be angry about my situation. Junior year brought the ultimate slap in the face. When Hurricane was born, my parents made a choice that still makes my blood pressure rise. Instead of putting the crib in their room like normal people do, they put it in mine. They said it was because I was so good with babies and they needed their sleep for work. They made this baby, but I was the one who had to give up sleep to take care of her because they had jobs. I was only 16 years old when I became a single dad to my baby sister. I had to feed her every 2 hours, change her diaper, deal with colic, and walk the floor for hours trying to get her back to sleep, all while trying to keep my grades up and not look like an extra from The Walking Dead at school. My room was basically a nursery with my bed in it. There was a crib against one wall, a changing table where my desk used to be, and baby supplies and bottles on every surface. My computer was moved to a corner where I could barely use it, and I couldn't have any privacy. My parents' bedroom was right down the hall, but they acted like it was in another time zone. The next morning, while I was stumbling around like a zombie trying to get ready for school, they said, "We didn't hear her crying." The whole neighborhood could hear Hurricane crying, but they chose to ignore it because they knew I'd handle it. The lack of sleep was brutal, and my grades started to drop. My friends stopped inviting me places because I was always tired or busy. My social life didn't just end. It was killed with malice of forethought. The academic effects were terrible. I went from being a solid B+ student to barely keeping a C average. Teachers started asking if everything was okay at home. But what was I supposed to say? My parents made me a single teenage dad. That seemed too crazy to be true. When my guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, called home about my dropping GPA, the conversation was unbelievable. "We're worried about his academic performance. His grades have dropped a lot this semester. Is everything okay at home?" My mom didn't miss a beat. "Oh, he's just going through a rebellious phase. You know how teenagers can be. Not applying himself like he should." Mrs. Patterson is clearly confused. "His teachers say he falls asleep in class a lot. Are you sure there's nothing wrong with his sleep schedule? He probably stays up too late playing video games. Kids these days don't know how to manage their time. Video games, right? Because I had so much free time." Mrs. Patterson suggested maybe I needed more support or fewer responsibilities at home to help me focus on my studies. My mom actually laughed. "Kids these days have it too easy. A little responsibility never hurt anyone. Builds character." The conversation ended with my mom promising to talk to me about time management and study habits, which translated to a lecture about how I needed to try harder and stop making excuses. That spring, I got the last academic kick in the teeth. I had been accepted into a competitive engineering summer program at the state university. It was 3 weeks of hard work that could have helped my college applications a lot. The program was selective, looked great on resumes, and I was really excited about it for the first time in months. My parents' response when I told them about the acceptance: "Who's going to watch the kids while we work? It's only 3 weeks. And Paul said he'd help out on weekends. We're not imposing on Paul every time you want to do something." They flat out refused to let me go. No discussion, no compromise, and no thought given to what this opportunity could mean for my college prospects. That acceptance letter just reminded me of all the things I was missing out on because my parents didn't want to raise their own kids. My dad said there would be other chances, as if prestigious summer programs grew on trees. "When?" I asked. "When will there be time for other chances?" He didn't have an answer for that. The worst part was seeing other kids from my school post about their summer programs on social media. They weren't smarter than me or had better grades, but their parents cared more about their education than their own comfort. They got to spend their summer learning and building resumes, while I spent mine changing diapers and breaking up fights between Spitter and Tornado. Around this time, my mom's sister decided to get involved. Aunt Karen, and yes, that's really her name, was basically my mom's enabler and #1 cheerleader. Karen had 2 kids of her own, but they were perfect little angels who never caused any trouble. Of course, she also had a husband who helped with parenting and enough money to hire babysitters when needed. She'd come over for Sunday dinners and watch the chaos like it was a show. Karen would sit there with a smile while the tornado was tearing up the living room and Spitter was ruining the food supply. "You're so lucky to have such a helpful oldest," she'd tell my mom while I was literally chasing Velcro around the table, trying to get him to eat something that wasn't candy. My kids would never be this responsible. When Paul started calling out my parents' behavior during family gatherings, Karen appointed herself as the family defender. "Some people need to mind their own business," she said pointedly during one tense dinner. Paul had questioned why I was the one getting all the kids ready for bed while my parents watched TV. "Not everyone gets family values," she'd spit. Paul didn't give up. "What family values? Making a teenager take care of your kids? He's learning responsibility. It'll make him a better man. It'll make him hate his family." The tension in that room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My parents acted like this was a normal family discussion, but I just wanted to disappear into the floor. Later, while I was cleaning up the mess from supper, Karen stopped me in the kitchen and said, "You know how good you have it here, right? Some kids don't have families that care about them," she added, blocking my way to the dishwasher. I was 17 and sick of being gaslit. "Yeah, some kids don't have to be parents to their siblings." Her face went cold. "In this family, being thankful goes a long way. Your parents work hard to take care of all of you, and I work hard to raise their kids. What's your point? Your parents could have put you in foster care when things got tough, but they chose to keep the family together. It was like they were doing me a favor by being responsible parents." That's when I realized Karen wasn't just enabling my parents. She really thought this was normal. When Karen started bringing her perfect little angels over to play, things got even worse. Her kids would sit quietly with coloring books while mine turned the house into a disaster zone. And she'd make these pointed comments about how different parents do things. "Some families are more structured," she'd say, watching Destroyer try to flush a toy car down the toilet. "But every family finds what works for them. What worked for my family apparently was war zone." I dreaded Karen's visits because she always found ways to support my parents' story that I was lucky to be trusted with important tasks. She would tell my parents how dependable I was, which made them give me more work. "You've raised such a responsible young man," she would remark. "Yes, they taught me to take care of everyone but myself." Last month, fast forward. I'm 18 now and barely making it through my senior year with a 2.08 GPA that should have been much higher until my parents chose to drop the atomic bomb during a family gathering. My mom said, "We have exciting news," as if she were giving out the winning lottery numbers. I knew what was going to happen. We're going to have another child. 7. 7 is a lucky number. The room started to whirl like I was in a strange version of Inception. As their son, they weren't even telling me. The way my dad said it made everything extremely clear. "When the baby comes, we'll need more help. It's a good thing you're 18 now since you can take on more responsibility without breaking the law." Problems with the law. They had really thought about what the law would say about their child labor business. Screamer really did start to cheer. "A different baby. Can we give it a name?" The Destroyer seemed bewildered. "Where are we going to put it? There isn't any more room. Can I feed it? I promise I won't spit on it," Spitter pleaded with her typical charm. Velcro quickly stuck to my leg. "Will you take care of this one too?" And Hurricane, as if she understood what was going on, started wailing immediately away. I looked at my parents and saw that they had learned nothing from the first 6 disasters. My mom was so happy that it seemed like this was the finest news she had ever shared. My dad had a smug smile on his face, as if he had just solved all of their issues by inventing another minion. At that point, something inside me just broke. I was done, totally done. I said goodbye, went to my room, which was still half nursery, and called Gramps. "Grandpa, they messed up again. Please help me. Please let me live with you." The quiet lasted about 3 seconds before he blew up. Not at me, but at the situation. "Those fools are having another child. What the hell is wrong with them?" I had never heard Gramps say a bad word before. I knew then that he was just as sick of my parents as I was. "Get your things together. We're gonna grab you right now." My parents were already hammering on the door and telling me to come out while I was packing. I didn't pay attention to it. I got some clothes, my phone and charger, and most importantly, my birth certificate and social security card. Thanks to our /legal advice for the tip. Gramps and Nana got there in less than 30 minutes, and I was already gone. It was the angriest I had ever seen my grandparents. Gramps looked like he wanted to shake my parents until their teeth fell out. The sight on my parents' faces when they found out I was going. Just shock. They weren't sad that their son was leaving. They were already freaking out over who would take care of their duties. My mom yelled, "You can't just leave," like I was breaking a promise. "Watch me," I murmured as I walked by her with my duffel bag. My dad said, "We're your parents." Like that meant something to those who had treated me like hired work for years. I answered no and stopped at the door. "You are the ones who gave me life. There is a distinction." Gramp came up next to me. "Maybe he wouldn't be leaving if you had treated him like family instead than a worker." My dad looked like he was going to argue, but Nana stopped him with just one glance. She continued, "We'll be in touch about his things." And then she led me out the door. I could see my parents standing in the doorway as we drove away, with the kids' chaos going on behind them. They were finally getting a taste of what their lives were like without their free babysitter. My phone became a notification nightmare within a few hours after I got away. Text messages that were angry, calls that were missed, and voicemails that were angry, manipulative, or just plain sad. First came the rage. "How could you leave your family like this? Get your butt home right now. You are being selfish and not thankful." They switched to guilt when that didn't work. "Your brothers and sisters want to know where you are. Velcro has been crying ever since you left." Then came the manipulation. "We've always been there for you. Family is there for each other no matter what." But it was my dad's text at 2 a.m. that really highlighted what they were like. "Do you know how much it costs to hire a babysitter? You can't just leave us like this." There it was. They weren't really worried about losing their son. They lost their free childcare. The mask was all the way off. My mom sent me more and more desperate messages saying that they needed me and couldn't function without my support. Not because they missed me as their child, but because I was important to how their house worked. They made threats when guilt didn't work. "You won't be 18 till you graduate. We can make you come back. We are going to call the police. You're making a big error that will hurt your future." They really did what the police said they would do twice. Both times, the police officers who came to help just looked at the issue and urged my parents to get a life. The first cop was obviously angry. He talked to my parents privately and told them that I was old enough to pick where I lived after talking to me and making sure I was there of my own free will. My mom said, "But he's still our minor child. He's 18 and a senior in high school, ma'am. We can't do anything until you can show us proof of kidnapping or coercion. This is taking someone against their will. They're making him hate us." Officer Johnson looked like he needed some rest. "Did your son travel on his own?" "Yes, but then it's not kidnapping. And grown-up is making a choice regarding where to reside." 2 days later, the second call produced another cop who was much less patient. He told my parents, "We've done this before. Your son is old enough to choose where he wants to live. Maybe you should pay more attention to the kids you still have at home instead of the one who can clearly take care of himself." My dad's face turned redder than a stop sign. "This is harassment. They're interfering with our parental rights. You don't have many parental rights over an 18-year-old, sir. If you think otherwise, you should talk to a lawyer." The threat came next. They were going to sue my grandparents for interfering with parental rights and kidnapping me. Gramps, being the legend he is, called their bluff. "Go ahead and get a lawyer. I'd love to hear you explain to a judge why you're suing to force your son into unpaid childcare. It's not free child care. It's a family duty, right? And I'm sure a judge will be very interested in hearing about those family duties." That shut them up right away. Meanwhile, Paul was getting updates from Karen, who was apparently leading the family campaign to make me look bad. Paul sent me a family group text that was a work of art in delusion. "Karen, I can't believe he would leave his family like this after everything they've done for him. His poor mother is going crazy. 7 kids and no help. Paul, maybe if they treated him like a son, he wouldn't have left. Karen, he's being selfish and ungrateful. Family sticks together through thick and thin. Paul, family doesn't exploit their kids. Karen, you're filling his head with nonsense about being exploited. He had a roof over his head and food on the table. Paul, and what did he have to do to earn those basic necessities that every parent is legally required to provide?" Karen didn't have an answer for that one. The best part was seeing how the family changed in real time. Other relatives who had been quiet started asking questions about what was going on. My mom's cousin posted in the group chat, "Wait, why was he doing so much child care? Aren't there 6 other kids and 2 parents?" Suddenly, Karen was backpedaling. He wasn't doing that much. He just helped out like any good big brother. Paul, bless him, wasn't going to let that go. He had a baby sleeping in his room and was feeding it at night. That's not helping out. That's being a parent. The truth was coming out, and Karen didn't like how it made her sister look. That's when things got really interesting. Gramps and Nana had been writing down more than I thought. Every time I came over tired, every time I made a joke about being the third parent, and every time I had a conversation that made me worried, Gramps had been keeping track. He pulled out a notebook he had been keeping for months, with dates, times, and notes about my behavior and stress levels. He was basically running his own investigation without telling anyone. The notebook had damning entries like, he fell asleep during dinner on March 15th. He was up all night with the baby again. He missed his school science fair on April 2nd because his parents needed him to babysit. He'd been working on his project for months. He lost weight on June 10th. My grandparents had been getting ready for this moment. They had been keeping records for months when they called CPS. They had screenshots of texts where my parents told me to cancel plans for babysitting duty and pictures I had sent of the house disaster zones as jokes that actually showed the chaos and neglect. Mrs. Madison was the social worker in charge of the case. When she came to my parents' house for the first time, she found exactly what you would expect. Chaos. My parents tried to brush it off as just another day and kids being kids, but she wasn't buying it. She asked, "Where do the kids usually play?" Looking around the disaster zone that used to be a living room. "Oh, anywhere really. We believe in letting kids be creative." "I see," she said. "And who usually watches their creativity?" My parents exchanged glances. "Well, our oldest usually helps out, but he's not available right now." "Not available? How?" "He's staying with his grandparents for a while. It's a teenage rebellion phase. You know how it is." Mrs. Madison made a note in her file. "I'd like to talk to the kids one-on-one if that's okay." When she interviewed my siblings separately, the truth came out fast. Kids are terrible liars. Who usually took care of the baby at night? Me. Who helped with homework? Me. Who got them ready for school when mom and dad were too tired? Take a wild guess. Who made sure they brushed their teeth, had clean clothes, and ate something that looked like breakfast? 3 guesses. First 2 don't count. Screamer, bless his chaotic little heart, was very honest. He does everything. Mom and dad mostly watch TV. My older brother helped me with everything. The house inspection was even worse. How long has your oldest child been primarily responsible for childcare duties? She asked during the formal interview. He's not primarily responsible. He just helps out. The other kids said he was the one who took care of the baby at night, set up the baby's schedule, and gave the baby daily care. Would you call that helping out? My parents tried to explain, but they couldn't come up with good reasons. The last straw was when she asked to see where Hurricane slept. My parents had to admit that the crib had been in my room. "So where is the baby sleeping now?" "Oh, we moved the crib to the living room for now while we figure out a more permanent solution." Temporarily, right? Mrs. Madison ended her first visit by promising to come back for follow-up inspections and individual interviews with each family member. The look on my parents' faces told me they knew they were getting screwed. After 3 weeks of unannounced visits, interviews, and reviewing documents, the CPS investigation came to a close. The official finding was what I had hoped for: inappropriate delegation of parental responsibilities to a minor child, which led to educational problems and emotional stress. In simple terms, my parents were guilty of what everyone with a working brain already knew. The punishment was beautiful. They had to take parenting classes, not just suggested ones. My parents, who were both in their 30s, had to sit in a classroom with other dysfunctional adults and learn what responsibilities you can give to kids of different ages. Required child care education. They had to take a class on age-appropriate household tasks and how to spot stress in kids. A family case worker had to visit them for 6 months. Madison would make surprise visits to make sure they weren't doing the same things with my other siblings. The house had to stay clean to a certain level. The kids had to be properly supervised, and my parents had to show that they were really parenting instead of just managing chaos. They had to pay for babysitters for date nights and errands, so no more free labor from their kids. I had to sign a paper saying I knew my rights. They had to sign a paper saying that I could go to school and do things without having to do too much around the house. The real punishment was in their wallets and their reputation. Word spread quickly through their social circle about the CPS investigation. Other parents suddenly started asking them uncomfortable questions about their family. Some of their friends started to see them differently when they found out why their oldest son had moved out. The financial effects were immediate and terrible. Professional child care for 5 kids during their weekly date night costs $100 to $150 per night. Now they had to pay someone or bring all the kids, which meant they had to deal with the chaos themselves. My dad had to work extra hours just to pay for the babysitter. My mom couldn't keep her part-time job anymore because someone had to be home with the kids when they weren't in school. During a very tense family gathering, Karen tried to defend them. CPS just doesn't get how close families work. They're messing with family dynamics. Paul, who was sick of her enabling, finally let her have it. Close families don't treat their teenagers like unpaid workers. Maybe if you'd spoken up instead of encouraging this mess, things wouldn't have gotten this far. I was supporting my sister, she defended. You were enabling child exploitation. The room went dead silent. Even my parents couldn't argue with that assessment. My mom's pregnancy became a source of stress instead of excitement. The custody threats evaporated when their lawyer, they eventually did get one, explained that any judge would laugh them out of court for trying to force an 18-year-old into unpaid childcare. The lawyer said they should work on fixing our relationship instead of trying to force me to come back. As for me, I'm doing great. My grades went up right away when I started getting full nights of sleep. By the end of senior year, I had a 3.6 GPA instead of a 2.8. I got into the engineering program I had missed the summer before. They had a spot open for a spring session. My college applications are looking good, and I even have a part-time job at Gramps' friend's auto shop. It's real work that pays real money. Gramps and Nana won't take any money from my parents for my expenses. We're investing in our grandson's future, Nana told my mom during a heated phone call. Something you should have been doing all along. The relationship with my parents is permanently damaged, but honestly, I'm fine with that. Some of my siblings started asking questions about why I left and why strangers keep visiting the house. Screamer asked Mom why I had to take care of Hurricane at night when that was parent stuff. It's okay, my mom said. Families have to help each other. But Screamer, who wasn't happy with imprecise explanations, shot back. But why didn't you help him with his homework the way he helped us? Out of the mouths of babes. Paul has become an even bigger part of my life, filling the big brother position I never knew I needed. The nicest thing is that my parents are finally discovering what it really takes to have 6 kids. Paul's answer was brilliant. Welcome to the real cost of parenting. Most people figure that out before they have 6 kids.